where is SeaWorld in California and stuff like that.
There's a SeaWorld in San Antonio, Texas, too, which is also landlocked. So it wasn't that one.
Kind of a challenge. I found the unretouched 3D effects to be absolutely wonderful, because seeing, the blue-red separation and looking at it and saying, man, 3D has just always sucked.
Yes.
What did you watch it on? Because like the version that I watched it on DVD, like you could tell when they were doing a 3D effect, but like I couldn't see any of that like separation. It just looked different.
Well, there was a certain tint to the footage.
Yes.
That's what you're talking about, right, John?
Yeah. I'm talking about like something like when the glass breaks. Spoilers. When the shark comes through at the end and the glass breaks, the glass is this. It has this light blue wash on it, because the old 3D glasses were red and blue.
Yeah.
And so when the arm is floating in the water, it has a yellowish tint, but then there's a red saturation in the midground behind it, and that creates the separation for the way that those old glasses worked. And so every time that it switched to, an upfront 3D effect, it just jumped out. I watched it on iTunes, and it's one of those things where it is fascinating in the sense that I could see where they were going for it, but I marveled at the fact that Richard Matheson's name is on the screenplay.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
Blew my mind. Was this the one that said suggested by the novel Jaws by Peter Benchley?
Yes.
And I considered that an insult, because that book doesn't suggest this at all.
Sharks, buddy, sharks.
Yeah, okay. Sharks in water. And just opening with let's just go with the opening right away, that the shark's right there and they're doing that the water skiing thing.
Yes, the formation pyramid thing. Yeah,
the human pyramid water skiing thing. I sort of knew at that moment. I just had to sort of like emotionally disconnect and say, all right, you're not trying, I'm not trying. Let's just see where we can go.
You know how hard it is to do human water skiing, John? Why you got to slide it that way? Have you ever?
I wasn't slighting the human water skiers. It was just, it was such an odd sort of premise. And and the thing is, there were certain things that I wanted to latch onto, like Dennis Quaid, who's playing Mike, his girlfriend being very dedicated. We want to bring the shark in. We don't want to harm the shark. There's no need to harm the shark. Like, there was an actual voice of, conservationism to it, where, this shark is just out doing its thing. Like, it didn't have any malicious intent. Let's bring it in and try to save it and all of that sort of thing. But there's just not enough there to go with it.
Like, I think the idea for the movie is really good, and it is really intriguing. And, when we talked on the first one, I'm like, I don't know. After watching the first one, I would have been like, I don't know where they can take this. But a SeaWorld park is a good idea for a sequel for a Jaws movie. Like, to me, that's a very good writing to come up with that idea.
It's a really smart idea, because it's like, what can you do with a shark? And like, well, where are a lot of people? The beach. Well, we kind of did that. Well, SeaWorld, like a water park. Like, I think the concept for this is, I'm going to give Richard Matheson, I don't know, but I'm going to say Richard Matheson maybe came up with the concept, because I really like Richard Matheson. He's one of my favorite writers. He's written a lot of great Twilight Zone episodes, other short science fiction stories and novels. So maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe he came up with the water skiing in formation. Maybe I'm completely off about that, but I agree with you, Brandon. I think this is, if you need to do something different, because Jaws 2 is kind of like Jaws 1 in a lot of ways. We can't do that again. Let's do something really different. I think this is a really smart idea. The execution is just god-awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know where it falls apart for me, because there is a lot of good stuff in this, and it is a very much, an early 80s movie. Yes. The way the characters are, the way the acting is, the way the writing is done, the way the characters interact with each other. It's very much an early 80s film, and it's got a lot of the elements that I really like. So I can't even really put my finger on why this movie just doesn't work for me, but it just doesn't work for me. I don't know. I would like to see it in 3D. I've never seen it in 3D, but I would really love to see it in 3D. I have a 3D projector, right? So
I would offer that probably why the film fails to connect is that there is no real follow through or connective tissue with all of the different plots they try to get going. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to bet that if you did a little digging, you would find out that this movie got like edited within an inch of its life after they saw the first cut, where they said, "Oh, geez, okay," because you've got the younger brother drama, you've got the Leah Thompson girlfriend thing going on, you've got SeaWorld, like there's all of this stuff going on.
Crocodile Dundee shows up for a while.
Right, to take photographs. and none of it ever really lines up. It's almost like they went through successive drafts and they just kept adding on as opposed to fleshing out what needed to happen. And so I think that's why there's very much the impression of, well, there are some good ideas here that if you had executed them well, and probably instead of a first-time director, probably a more seasoned director would have sat down with the script and said, okay, we got to take this another draft, and this has to connect, we have to put all of these things together so that they flow properly and relate to each other. Have some linear narrative discipline with what's going on. I would suggest that's probably why the movie fails to connect or work.
Because there's some really great scares in this movie. I think there is. Like when the one guy goes down to weld the gate shut.
Tom Selleck, yeah.
Yeah, Tom Selleck. And they have the fake out with the fish, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a good jump. And then a few seconds later they have the other attack. And then also when his head comes by later on. That
was really gross, yes. I remember that when I was a kid. That was terrifying.
Yeah, like I think that's really good, and the scene where they're going through they're running away from the shark the first time, I think is really good. Like when they're underwater, Mike Brody and the girl, they go in to the water, right? And it's the first time the shark attacks them. I think is a really good scene, and the dolphins kind of come and save them. Like I really like that scene.
I was worried for the dolphins throughout the film.
I was too. I mean, like the dolphins are cute.
Yeah, because this film it's like Flipper meets Jurassic World. I say Jurassic World more than Jurassic Park because it's a fully operational park. I feel like Jurassic Park and Jurassic World are like smarter remakes of Jaws 3, which is ironic since Spielberg, was behind the Jurassic Park franchise as well. But you have more fleshed out characters. You have these same kind of characters, but they're more fleshed out. Like Muldoon, the hunter dude from Jurassic Park. That guy's a fascinating character. That's what they tried to make this Crocodile Dundee ripoff guy. If he was played by David Warner, I might like him a lot more. Much like we have a character who is a nothing character in Jaws 4, played by Michael Caine, but I like him a lot more because he's played by Michael Caine. Like Dennis Quaid. I don't know what is Dennis Quaid most famous for? Like he's a movie actor. Everybody knows Dennis Quaid, but like what is his big role? Like when did he hit it big? Because I don't really know.
I don't know specifically.
Enemy Mine wouldn't have been.
I would offer that Enemy
with
Mine...
Lou Gossett Jr., co-star of Jaws 3D.
Right. Like, man, we did so good on Jaws 3, we should do it again. Let's do Aliens.
I would offer, though, that Inner Space was also a big breakthrough for him.
Okay.
Which I think is relatively around the time of Enemy Mine, so that you see like dramatic Dennis Quaid and comedic Dennis Quaid. So it's like he can do anything, and that probably. And I talked about Wyatt Earp recently. He's the one positive thing in Wyatt Earp from 1994. So his Doc Holliday's pretty good.
He's in Traffic. Traffic is better than Jaws 3.
Yeah, well, he's just one of those actors. He's like the epitome of a B actor. Like he shows up in a lot of stuff. Everybody seems to like him, but he's never like Dennis Quaid stars in fill in the blank.
But he was in that Jerry Lee Lewis biopic, Great Balls of Fire. I think that might have been a big thing for him too.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so he's in this, and again, the Mike and Sean Brody are like way older than I think they should be. I brought this up in Jaws 2. Like, what is the chronology here? If this is 1983 and Jaws happened in 1975, this is 8 years after Jaws. So Mike Brody should be like maybe 18. But he was 17 in Jaws 2, which took place in 1978, which is its own continuity problem. And I don't even know about Sean. Sean was like 3 years old 8 years ago, and now he's 25. So I'm just very confused.
But I would say that there's that's a product more of the pre-video era. because when Jaws 3 comes out, people don't have Jaws and Jaws 2 on the shelf. So enough time has passed.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you could say that it's, I don't know.
Well, it's like the Universal monster movies. It's like if it's like, yeah, that's Frankenstein's castle over there. It's like, that's not, like if you watch Son of Frankenstein, they're talking about all these things that Frankenstein and his monster did in the previous 2 movies. You're like, that's not what happened at all. But I see your point about the lack of home video, John. Okay, I can flow with that.
Yeah, that kind of thing doesn't bother me here. So, but yeah, I don't know. Like, it's really tough to put a pin in it. But it's just, this movie is definitely not greater than the sum of its parts. I know that it's definitely lower rated for you guys. We'll get into our ratings later, but I mean, like I enjoy this. As I said with Jaws 2, like, I will never pick Jaws 3 off my shelf and watch it. But I will, when I go through a rewatch of the Jaws movies, I will always watch all 4 of them, and I enjoy watching this movie. Like, not the same amount as Jaws 2. I think Jaws 2 is definitely way better than this, but I think it's fun. And it works for me when I'm watching all 4 movies in a row, so, like, I like it. But it's not great. It's not a movie that's good enough that I'll pick it off the shelf and just watch it by itself.
I think the mention of Friday the 13th, that is an apt sort of callback, because, Friday the 13th Part 3, I dislike the Friday the 13th series as a whole, but Jaws 3 is sort of in that wheelhouse where I might, if it's playing for free and I, happen across it, I might watch it to get a couple of chuckles and do like, riff tracks on my own with it. But there is enough that doesn't work here that I almost get the sense that this script was written for a different purpose, and then they wedged in the character names and said, like the script existed, and then they said, you know what, let's polish it up and make it a Jaws movie.
Yeah,
and
that makes a lot of sense. I haven't seen any trivia to that effect, but they do that all the time, like Die Hard. Like every Die Hard sequel was supposed to be some other kind of movie.
Oh yeah,
Die Hard sequel.
Yep.
See, this movie is so forgettable that every time I watch it, I'm surprised when the first shark dies. Like, even this last time. And I just saw this movie a year ago. Aubrey and I watched all 4 Jaws movies last summer, and we just watched all 4 movies again. And when the first shark dies, I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I don't know. This movie is so forgettable.
It is.
Yeah, it's bland. I mean, to your point, John, earlier, like they don't build to anything with any of these characters. Sean shows up to hang out with Mike, I guess, and then like he's like trying to wrestle Lee Thompson, and then they're in love now. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, I didn't mind the fact that she got in a bikini and they went swimming. That was great, but it just seemed like, what is this game they're playing in this bar? And then there's like, they try to like hint at maybe a love triangle between Crocodile Dundee and Mike Brody's girlfriend, but that doesn't go anywhere. And it's just the characters, there's no arcs. They're just stagnant. They're just doing stuff. Like, I thought, because it's been forever since I've seen Jaws 3. I was like, oh my God, are they going to kill Lee Thompson? She's my favorite character. And I thought she died, and then she didn't. And then I'm like, why didn't she die? Why didn't more people die in this movie? Like, there is a lagoon full of tourists and stuff, and we got the big shark, chewing through everybody and everything, and there's chaos, but like nobody dies in that scene. I think maybe like 1 or 2 people die in that scene. I'll have to check my numbers at the end here. But I expected a lot more carnage in this movie than like a couple of repair workers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also thought that whole the undersea kingdom thing was so it was absurd to the point of humor, where everybody's going around, and it's a testament to how disengaged I was with the movie that I started mentally criticizing, the escape plans, the obvious lack of safety planning and stuff like that. And my wife works in a for an association that's part of the amusement park industry, and I'm sitting there going, oh, I know that's not up to code. Oh no, that's not standard at all. You'd never do anything like that. And like, it's this whole thing
this is the
where
80s.
It's like, if it can be the 80s all that it wants to be.
Seatbelts.
The amusement park industry has always been one of the most tightly regulated